All right, if you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead and turn in your notes to 2.2. Today we are going to learn the lesson about dividing integers. Now I just want to give you a heads up, we do have a quiz coming up on Wednesday. It's only going to be over 2 sections, 2.1 and 2.2, which is all about how to divide and multiply integers. I want you to pull out your red pen and fill in this top section. Now this top section, you'll notice, looks very similar to the notes that we wrote about 2.1 because dividing integers is the same exact rules as multiplying integers. All right, on your notes, I want us to be able to just distinguish between two different things. So if you would, take your pencil or your red pen and draw a cloud around the word even, and then draw a cloud around the word odd. When we're multiplying and dividing, the thing that we're doing is we are just counting the number of negative signs. So this first one, if there's an even number of negative signs, your answer will always be positive. Notice here it says positive quotient. That's just the answer to a division problem. So let's look at our first problem right here. Guys, how many negative signs do you see there? 2. Is the number 2 even or odd? Even. If you have an even number of negative signs, this tells us our answer has to be positive, okay? It says right there, if you have an even number of negative signs, your answer is going to be positive. So this answer has to be positive. Now let's just focus on this. What is 10 divided by 2? 5. So the answer is positive 5. Let's go to the next one. If you have an odd number of negative signs, then your answer has to be negative. So let's look at our example here. Negative 12 divided by 3. Jonathan, how many negative signs do you see there? 1. Because the number 1 is odd, class, does my answer have to be positive or negative? Negative. It has to be negative, so the answer is negative 4. Box that in. Okay? So we're using the even and odd rule anytime that we are multiplying or dividing integers. Let's do some problems with these examples. Looking at the first one, Maddie, negative 18 divided by negative 6. How many negative signs do you see there? 2. Because the number 2 is an even number, is my answer going to be positive or negative? Positive. It is going to be positive. So Maddie, what is negative 18 divided by negative 6? Very good. 3. All right, so the answer is going to be positive 3. You do not have to put that plus sign there. I'm just putting it there to kind of really show us that it is a positive, okay? If you're doing this with your red pen, go ahead and put your red pen at the top of your desk. You just want to do it with your pencil. Let's go on to problem B. Jacoby, negative 32 divided by negative 4. Is my answer going to be positive or negative? Positive. It will be positive. Good job, because there's 2 negative signs there, and that's an even number of negative signs. So what's the final answer, Jacoby? Positive 8 is correct. Box that in. Let's go to the next one. Jace, 14 divided by 2. Notice there's no negatives, so this is just a normal problem. 14 divided by 2, which is 7. Very good. On to the next one. Autumn, how many negative signs do you see? 2. There are 2. So is your answer going to be positive or negative? Positive. It will be positive. The answer is? Positive 5 is correct. Let's keep going. We're going to do 4 more problems just like these. 75 divided by negative 25. Whenever I see a 25, I try to count it like I'm thinking about counting quarters, okay? So how many quarters go into 75, all right? Who wants to help me with problem E? Go ahead. Is the answer going to be positive or negative? Negative. Negative, and what is the answer? Negative. Negative 3 is correct. I thought I was wrong for a minute. All right, the next one, 0 divided by negative 6. Jocelyn, anything divided by 0 always equals 0, okay? Now, guys, should that be a positive 0 or a negative 0? Nothing. Neither, okay? Good job, because it is just plain old 0. Never a positive, never a negative, okay? Let's go on to the next one. Negative 54 divided by positive 6. Reagan, how many negatives do you see? 1. That's an odd number of negative signs, so your answer has to be negative. So what is the answer? Negative 9 is correct. Next one, Michaela, 21 divided by negative 3. 7. Okay, and is the answer going to be positive or negative? It is negative, so the correct answer is -7. Any questions on our first section? How many of you feel like you're getting a good pulse on kind of how to do multiplying and dividing? All right. All right, for the next section, it says to evaluate the expression when x equals 8 and y equals -4. If I could have you guys circle x equals 8 and circle y equals -4. This is one of those sections where we're just going to be plugging things in for the x and the y. Luke, instead of x divided by 2y, what will I plug in for the x?
8.
8, very good. 8 over or divided by. Now, class, what does it mean when there's a number next to a letter? You multiply. 2y means 2 times y. So, Luke, I'm going to plug in 2 times. What am I plugging in for y? -4 is correct. All right, so let's put a little equal sign. 8 over, Luke, what is 2 times -4? -8 is correct. And now we have one part left. 8 divided by -8. Luke, what would that be?
0, right?
Nope. How many times can 8 go into 8? One time. Okay, now is the answer going to be positive or negative? Negative. Good job, because there was only one negative sign, so the answer is negative. Very good. Let's go on to the next one. -x² plus 12 divided by y. Whenever you have this negative here on the outside, repeat after me. Drop it down. We are simply just going to drop down that negative sign. All right. Jonathan, what should I plug in for the x? 8. Very good. So I'm going to plug in 8 squared. Bring down your plus. Bring down the 12. Bring down your divide. And Jonathan, what should I plug in for the y? -4. Now here's where things get confusing sometimes. When we have double signs like this, people are like, what do I do? So sometimes you might see somebody take this and put it in parentheses. That does not mean to multiply the -4. That simply means, hey, this is a negative number, all right? You don't have to put parentheses there. You can, simply because there was double signs, a negative next to a divide, all right? Let's keep moving on. This negative sign right there. Do you think I should square the negative? No, I am not going to square the negative, and here's why. It's not in parentheses. If this had been in parentheses, that means to square -8. Because it's not in parentheses, I am simply going to take that negative and drop it down. All right, Abigail, what is 8 squared?
16.
Not 8 times 2, 8 times itself. So what is 8 times 8? 64. Very good job. So we're going to bring down plus 12 divided by -4. Now, if you remember this past week on Friday, we learned about PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. According to PEMDAS, it tells us what order we need to do things in. This tells me I need to add, and this tells me I need to divide. Jocelyn, what comes first according to PEMDAS? Addition or division? Division comes first. So I want everyone to underline 12 divided by -4. That shows me I'm going to do that before I add in that -64. Jocelyn, what is 12 divided by -4? -3 is correct. Put that -3 directly below it. I still have something up here. What do you guys think I should do with that stuff that I didn't do anything with yet?
Drop it down.
Drop it down. Very good. So let's drop down -64 plus -3. If you remember, once again, we have double signs next door to each other. Plus and minus. I'd like to eliminate one. Whenever you have a plus and minus side by side, who always wins?
Minus.
The minus. The negative sign always wins. So what can I do with that plus sign?
Scratch it.
I can scratch it out and get rid of it. Now all that I'm left with is -64 minus 3. Remember that saying that we learned in chapter 1? Every number has a sign, and that sign is directly in front of that number. Guys, are these both negatives or are they different? They're both negatives, so same sign, add and keep. Add the numbers, keep the sign. What's the answer, guys?
-67.
-67 is correct. Box that in. Here we go. Reagan, what should I plug in instead of x squared?
8.
8 squared, okay? Over or divided by, what should I plug in instead of a y?
-4.
-4. And then also bring over the plus 4. Okay, Reagan, what is 8 squared?
16. No.
Not 8 times 2, 8 times itself.
64.
64 divided by -4 plus 4. All right, according to PEMDAS, we know that we have to do this first. Remember, whenever you have a fraction bar, that means to divide. If you don't know how to do that in your head, you can always come over here and do it off to the side. 64 divided by 4. Reagan, help us with that. All right, and then how many times does 4 go into 24? Very good. 6 times 4 is 24. And then remember, when you get to a 0, then you're done. So now let's go back here. It was 64 divided by -4. Reagan, is that going to be positive or negative?
Negative.
It does have to be a negative. And we found out that it was 16. So -16 plus 4. Now, Reagan, looking at this right here, am I adding and subtracting there, or am I multiplying and dividing there?
You're adding and subtracting?
You are correct. We are adding and subtracting. So think back to the rules. Same sign, add and keep. Different sign, subtract and take. What is -16 plus 4? Okay, and then take the sign of the larger number.
-12.
-12 is correct. Any questions for Reagan on how she just did that one? All right, very good job. Okay, so be reminded, your quiz on Wednesday is going to look similar to this right here that we're doing, okay? Now, there's a couple modeling real life problems that I want us to do together, so if you would, go ahead and turn to the next page. Okay, so this says you measure the height of the tide using the support beams of a pier. The height of the tide is 59 inches at 2 p.m. and 8 inches at 8 p.m. What is the mean hourly change in the height? All right, so that's a lot of information right there. Basically, how many of you have ever been to the beach before? Okay, have you ever seen the tide go up and then the tide go down? Okay, so you can see at 2 p.m. it's up here at 59 inches. Does it go up or down by 8 p.m.? It goes down. Very good. Okay, so we know our answer is going to be a negative because the tide is going down. Now, what I've got here, it says verbal model and substitution. Verbal model is simply where we're going to come up with words of what we are doing, and then we'll substitute or we'll plug numbers into those words. So for the verbal model, I want you to write this down. The first thing I want you to write down is the final height. Okay, so basically the height of the water at the very end. And then we are going to subtract or take away the initial height. Initial height just means the height that it was at the beginning. So we'll take the final height, the height of the end, and subtract the initial height, the height at the beginning. Once again, everything on my screen, you want to make sure that it is in your notes, and this is going to help you with a verbal understanding of what it is that we're plugging in here in just a minute. That's not the only thing you have to do, though. We have to take the time into account, too. So we will then divide it. I'm going to put it out over a fraction, divided by the time elapsed. The time elapsed simply means how much time went by. All right, for the next part, the substitution, I am simply going to plug in or substitute numbers for these things. So guys, let's focus on this first part right here, the final height. What was the final height at the end of the night, class? 8 what? 8 inches. So underneath here for the substitution, I want you guys to plug in 8 inches, okay? So we've just plugged in what the final height is. Then you have to subtract, all right? Put a minus sign. Minus the initial height. The initial height is the height at the beginning. At the beginning of our problem, what was the initial height? 59 inches is correct. All right, remember, as I'm walking around, I see some people have not written on their papers what it is that I have on the board. Everything I'm writing in here is really important to have in your notes, so make sure whether I'm by your desk or not, you've got those written down in there because this gives you a good study guide, okay? Now, I have to divide it by the time elapsed. Guys, how much time passed according to this problem right here?
6
6 hours.
6 hours, very good. So we're going to divide it by 6 hours. All right, now let's kind of work this out. 8 inches minus 59 inches. Same sign or different sign? Different sign. Subtract and take. So guys, what's 59 minus 8?
51 inches.
51 inches, okay? And take the sign of the larger number. Negative. Okay, so that means it went down 51 inches per 6 hours. Now here's the deal. I want us to focus on this last question. What is the mean hourly change in the height? Basically that means I don't want to know how much happened in 6 hours. I want to know how much happened in 1 hour. How much it changed every single hour. Now I have this down here as 6 hours. If I were to divide 6 by a number, what number do I need to divide it by to get it to be equal to 1? Correct. You divide it by itself. So we're going to divide it by 6. If I divide the bottom by 6, what do you think I have to do to the top? I have to be fair and divide it by 6 also. Okay, because basically when I'm dividing by 6/6, I'm just dividing by the number 1. Okay? Equals, now if you don't know how to do this in your head, okay, you're trying to figure out how many times 6 goes into 51, you can always do it over here on the side. 51 divided by 6. Go and do that on your own. All right, guys, how many times does 6 go into 51? 8 times. 8 times 6 is? 48. 51 minus 48? 3. Okay, so now I'm left with 8 and 3/6. Can 3/6 be reduced at all?
Yes.
Yes. What does it become?
8 1/2.
1/2. Okay, so now my answer over here is 8 and 1/2. But I want you to focus on this part right here. We were dividing a negative by a positive. There's only one negative there. So does my answer have to be positive or negative?
Negative.
It has to be negative according to the even and odd rule. And it's negative 8.5 inches. Over, now let's focus on this bottom part. What is 6 hours divided by 6? 1 what?
Inches.
Not inches. 1
Hour.
hour. So notice our final answer says negative 8.5 inches over 1 hour, which means it lost 8.5 inches, that's why it's negative, per hour. Anytime, once again, when it comes back and says to find the mean hourly change, that means how much did it change per 1 hour. So this changed, or it decreased 8.5 inches per 1 hour. All right, we're going to try to do another one very similar to that. I want you guys to read problem B on your own. All right, so problem B says, a female grizzly bear weighs 500 pounds. After hibernating for 6 months, she weighs only 350 pounds. What is the mean monthly change in weight? What does hibernating mean? Sleeps. How long does this bear sleep for?
6 months.
6 months. How many of you guys would like to sleep for 6 months? Ooh, a lot of you. Think of all the life you would miss out on. All right, so listen. During that 6 months, did this grizzly bear gain weight or lose weight? Imagine if you could fall asleep for 6 months and lose some weight. This is a crazy scenario. All right, so we got to do a verbal model first. Our verbal model is going to look very similar to the verbal model we did in problem A. Problem A says the final height minus the initial height divided by the time. This is going to be an important formula that we're going to want to know for our quiz on Wednesday and our test on Friday. Repeat after me. Final minus initial divided by the time. Final minus initial divided by the time. Do it one more time. Final minus initial divided by the time. All right, so listen, if I'm coming up with some kind of a little jingle for us to say or do, it probably means I want it to stick in your head and for you to remember how to do this kind of a problem in the future. So the verbal model, it's going to look very similar to problem A, but problem A said the final height minus the initial height divided by the time. Am I worrying about the bear's height here?
No.
What am I thinking about?
Weight.
The weight, the pounds, okay? So for our verbal model this time, it's going to be the final weight minus the initial weight. and we are still going to divide it by the time elapsed or the time that passes by. All right, so I want you guys to write in that little formula in our verbal model spot. All right, let's see. Substitution. We're plugging in things now instead of our formula that we came up with. Maddie, what was the final weight at the end of this story problem? How much did this female grizzly bear weigh? You are correct. So we are plugging in 350 pounds for the final weight minus the initial weight. Jace, how much was she originally weighing at the beginning? 500. So we are minusing the initial weight, which was 500 pounds. Am I done?
No.
No, what do I have to do?
You have to
Divide it by the
time elapsed.
elapsed. How much time passed by? 6
6 months.
months. All right, so now we have substituted it in. We've plugged it all in, okay? So just remember that formula. Final minus initial divided by the time. That'll help you to know how to do these kind of problems, all right? Here we've got 350 pounds minus 500 pounds. What is 350 minus 500?
150.
150. Take the sign of the larger number.
Negative 150.
Negative 150. That means she lost 150 pounds in or per 6 months. Now my question back at the beginning says, what is the mean monthly change? That means, how much did it change per month? Does this answer right here that we just came up with, does that tell me how much it changed in 1 month? No, it changed in how much? 6 months. I want that 6 months to turn into 1 month. What number do I need to divide it by? 6. Divide it by itself, and that will equal 1. So I'm going to divide the bottom by 6, which means I have to also divide the top by 6. All right, once again, you can use the space on your paper and just write out what 150 divided by 6 is. I want you guys to do that on your own and find that answer. All right, guys, as you did that, what is 150 divided by 6? 25, very good. Now let's go back over here. It was a negative divided by a positive, so my answer has to be negative. So it's negative 25 pounds per how many months?
1.
Look at that bottom right here. We did 6 months divided by 6. What is 6 divided by 6? 1. So that means per 1 month. So every month she lost 25 pounds, and that's how at the end she only weighed 350. I have 3 final problems here which are similar to our lesson today. Find the quotient. I want you guys to do these 3 problems on your own. All right, let's see how we did. Just the girls. What is negative 12 divided by 4?
Negative 3.
Negative 3. The next one, boys, what does the problem ask me? I want you to read me what the original problem says.
Negative 6 divided by negative 2.
Very good. That fraction bar means negative. So, boys, what is negative 6 divided by negative 2? Positive or negative? It is a positive 3. You count the number of negative signs because there were 2 of them. The number 2 is an even number, so your answer has to be positive. Okay? Final one. 15 divided by negative 3 equals?
Negative 5.
Negative 5 is correct. Was there anyone who got all 3 of them correct? All right. Excellent work. That is the end of our lesson for today. Just be reminded there is a quiz coming. Yes, your quiz is coming up on Wednesday, okay? So tonight I'm going to have you go ahead and do the 2.2 homework over our lesson for today.